There are a whole range of new designs coming through in terms of wind turbines at all scales. Obviously, the most efficient ones are 2 megawatts, but some new ones that we're seeing coming from Italy, designed by Philip Stark, for putting on roofs in suburban conditions, are also very efficient and will work well. So we'll see a lot more localized as well as bigger wind turbines in the future. This was a photovoltaic canopy that I built in Yorkshire. This was the biggest flat array of photovoltaics in Europe when it was first built. Generated about 30% of the energy that the building was needed, although they were very energy efficient buildings. This is the battle of the roofs. So I talked about the way you could use roof spaces. Well, this is a brown roof. So you've got your biodiversity and your insulation on the roof of the building. In Germany, they're also using it for generating energy. So the roofs of buildings, that whole space, has been neglected for a long time. This is sewage treatment without using chemicals and very low energy. It's called a living machine. Just a big greenhouse with a series of ponds. This is one we built in Yorkshire again. The famous architect will also. Those are kids getting a very graphic exhibition about what happens to their, in an elegant way of saying this, this is integrated infrastructure. This is Hammarby in Stockholm, a big new settlement, where when you're planning something big from new, you can combine the different resource inputs and waste streams to create an integrated sustainable infrastructure. This is Hammarby. Again, high density living, not for everyone, not intended to be for everyone, but incredibly successful, probably the most sustainable in environmental sense new development in Europe. It's an organic restaurant that we built in Yorkshire, and food becoming a key issue, local food for health, for biodiversity, and cooking and that quality of life issues. In Manchester on the project we've been working on, this whole new concept of local foods. So you've heard of carnivores and herbivores. These are people eating local food. Something like 35% of your environmental footprint is the food we eat. So it's not just about organic and not having chemicals, it's principally about the quality of food, its seasonality, its where it comes from, and growing food in urban areas can improve the quality of the city, but it can also improve the quality of your restaurants and cafes and your markets. If you want to regenerate a place, start a new market. If anyone doubts that, go to Broadway Market in East London and see what's happening around that area. Individual flagship buildings. If you're going to build opera houses and civic centres, make sure they're solar powered. This building was to be powered entirely by photovoltaics, designed by Jan Kriplicki, the man in the Future Systems. Bit on the methodology now. Got a couple of minutes. Okay. I'm not going to be able to go through this in detail because I think it's better to stop and we can have a debate. But what our company is about is how do you bring all these different elements together to create a culture of sustainability in cities, a way of living, and where people can make choices about their lifestyles that are more sustainable than otherwise. How do you bring all that together? Because we've got to talk about the way we live, and a fundamental part of that is engaging citizens in these strategies and in these decisions. There's no way that it can be done through public lectures and talks and legislation and the state requiring people to live in that way. It won't happen. We've got to have extraordinary processes in neighbourhoods around our cities to change the way that we live and to regenerate our neighbourhoods around this new model. Absolutely crucial. What normally happens, a client will buy some land, a client appoints a team, a professional team designs a scheme that's compliant with legislation, the team will have a chat with the planners and a few other gatekeepers, hold a bit of a public exhibition, submit a planning application and build unsustainable crap. Governments do it, they decide what they're going to do, they announce it, they defend it like crazy against opposition, and then they abandon it. And we can't have that anymore. We've got to have citizens' involvement in the redesign of our neighbourhoods. And the risk is that we get these kind of technotopias. This is Masdar City in the desert, an entirely inappropriate place to build a city. It's an entirely inappropriate design for a city. This is by Norman Foster and Harrop. Zero carbon. This is the technical utopia that will create a bad, brave new world if we're not careful. And beware the terrific imaginary low-carbon technologies, or tilts. These are things that you'll see in the newspapers because they're sexy to write about, with absolutely no bearing on our challenge in the next 30 years to reduce our carbon emissions, because they won't happen in that timescale. It's got to be much more to do with ordinary choices and ordinary design. So stakeholder workshops at the local level enables these are design inquiries that we run when we're designing projects for our clients. We have youth panels, we work with schools. Our designers work very publicly with local communities so that people participate very actively in these exercises. This is process mapping for the whole thing from beginning to end. I'm going to just race through this right to the end of the talk. This is our own development on the edge of Reading, which is 60% renewable, which will be the most renewable energy in any new settlements in the United Kingdom. And it's essentially large photovoltaic panels and biomass combined heat and power at the local level. These are solar panels on the roofs of the Muse conditions. And this is very suburban. This is densities of about 50 per hectare. So it's, you would think of that as very high density indeed. We would think of that as very civilized edge of city living. Development and delivery models. Behavioural change is key. I said that Joanna makes these programs. This was for tonight, which I've been told, so about 5 million people. She spent a week with a family in Cumbria, again, greening the way that they lived, and they loved it. It just showed that it's not about living in a cave with the TV switched off. It was about doing things as a family together that they'd stopped doing, actually. 1,001 ways you can change your living. What we're trying to do is not require this to happen by laws. The risk is a kind of eco-fascist state where the centre tells you how you're going to live and rations your carbon and brings in. That will happen unless we develop some new ethics about, some new norms about the way that we choose to live in our neighbourhoods and our communities. We need this plan A because there is no plan B. And it's about getting real, understanding the science, getting over the worrying too much about it and getting on and making these changes in our neighbourhoods and cities across the planet. We're going to need to think about exploring other ways of living rather than just the dominant Western model. And if you can't do that, don't build anything. Development doesn't have a right to exist, new or existing. If you can't do it sustainably, you're adding carbon by doing new development. But however worthy the scheme might be, unless you can do pretty much zero carbon developments on a large scale in this day and age, which affects behavioural change, you've got no license to do the development. So when we're thinking about Harborside here in Auckland in the future, let's look for inspiring examples. This is Malmo, again over 20, 30 years, planned process of regenerating a whole piece of city to be done as sustainably as possible. Don't like the town much, but some superb quality of urbanism, Scandinavian style. Some of these models exist that we can copy or learn from when we're doing big development schemes in Auckland and elsewhere. To finish then, you're 100% pure. What a fantastic brand. Beautiful brand and absolutely terrifically in tune with the natural environments of New Zealand, not quite in tune with the urban built environments of New Zealand. So to retain the authenticity of this brand, the remaking of New Zealand cities and towns around these principles and discipline of sustainability, I would suggest to you, and I realise I'm British now, in Britain we've got so much to do in that we've invented all these terrible ways of living. 25% of all the carbon in the global, man-made carbon in the global atmosphere has come from Britain because we were the first to the Industrial Revolution. So I'm not coming here to do a sort of preachy thing as a Brit. I'm just saying we all have to address this. You just happen to have one of the best brands and one of the best countries in the world. You've got your 70 to 80% renewable energy. You've got to carry some of that philosophy and that thinking over to your cities, because actually in the middle of the road you get knocked over. Thank you very much indeed.